Hi guys, I'm just sitting outside. I'm going to read you another book I found. This one's called Everglades. Jean Craighead George Everglades, and the paintings are by someone else. I don't know if this is going to work. Let me see. Let me try it this way. Okay. Everglades. The storyteller pulled the children under arching trees into a sunny water glade. He sat down and leaned toward them. "I'm going to tell you a story," he said. "It's not a story about a person or a mythical creature. It's not even a story about an animal." The children looked at each other and waited. "It's a story about the river." He swung his arms in a wide circle. "This river, the miraculous Everglades of Florida. My story will be different from any you have heard because this river is like no other river on earth. There is only one Everglades." The children all leaned forward. He began. So this is a picture of the Everglades, which we've talked about quite a bit in science class. First, there was sunshine on a blue-green sea. It was the age of the seashells, so a long time ago. The seashells formed a rock called limestone on the sea bottom. Over the eons, the sea lowered and the rock became land. The long Florida peninsula took shape in warm, sunny waters. Purple clouds floating or flashing with lightning rolled and boomed above the land. Rain gushed from the storm clouds in summer. Sun bathed the land in winter. Moss grew, then ferns, then grass and trees. The rain eroded holes in the soft limestone. What type of rock is limestone? See if you remember. And filled them with water. Florida glistened with green land and blue-green lakes. One was Lake Okeechobee, round, deep, and as clear as window glass. Lake Okeechobee filled to its brim and spilled over. This spill became a river that seeped 100 miles down the peninsula from Lake Okeechobee to the Florida Bay. It was 50 miles wide and only 6 inches deep in most places. Well, that's pretty shallow. The river did not chortle and splash. It did not crash over falls and race. It was a slow river that gleamed like quicksilver. We know it today as the Everglades. Into the shallow, warm river came tiny, one-celled animals and plants. They lived and died and made gray-green soil on the bottom of the river. Sawgrass took root in the soil. Ooh, whoa, look at that. The grass prospered. When the winds blew, the sawgrass clattered like a trillion swords. Each sword was edged with cutting spines. Of the larger animals, only the leathery alligator could walk unharmed among the terrible spears of the sawgrass. Around the stems of the grass scurried the youngs of insects and tiny crabs and snails. Little fish found these to be excellent eating. Turtles and alligators found the fish to be excellent eating. Every wild thing ate well, and there was still an enormous abundance. To the abundance came the birds. Clouds of lacy white egrets made their home in the Everglades. Ooh. A multitude of panthers, raccoons, deer, and otter came to the river. They made their homes on the beautiful islands. A plenitude of orchids bloomed and turned the island trees into colorful cathedral windows. A plethora of lizards and anoles clambered over the orchards, and 2,000 kinds of plants, including palms, vines, and bushes, grasses, and trees. When all were in place, the Everglades was a living kaleidoscope of color and beauty. It glittered with orchids, grass, trees, birds, panthers, raccoons, snakes, mosquitoes, ugh. All things large and small that make the earth beautiful. I don't know about mosquitoes, guys. Ooh, look. Look at all those vertebrates you see that live in the Florida Everglades. The storyteller paused, and the children looked around and pondered. Then the storyteller went on. When the Everglades was perfect, people who called themselves Calusas, the Indians, arrived. They lived gracefully on the fish and game and made tools out of seashells. The Spanish conquistadors arrived and the Calusa people disappeared. The conquistadors were afraid of the flesh-ripping grass and roaring animals of the Everglades, and so they moved on. North of Florida, European men pushed the Creek Indians out of the Carolinas. Some of them walked south until they came to the silvery Everglades. Look at those mangroves. Those trees grow down. It's an adaptation, so their roots grow down in shallow water and give life to animals that lived inside there for nesting. Some of the Indians poled deep into the grass and settled on the islands. They are the Seminole Indians. A few of them live here today. The storyteller paused. The children looked around. Where are the clouds of egrets? A child asked. Well, the hunters shot them by the tens of thousands and sold the feathers to decorate women's hats. Only a few survived the slaughter. Where are the quantities of alligators? Another child asked. Well, the hunters shot them by the acres and sold their gleaming hides to make wallets and shoes. Only a few remain. Well, where did the cathedral windows of orchids go? A third child asked. Well, the orchids hunters picked gardens and gardens of them and sold them to put on ladies' dresses. Practically none can be found now. Another child looked around. And where did the mammals and snails and one-celled plants and animals go? Well, they vanished when the engineers dug canals in the Everglades and drained the fresh water into the sea to make land. Farmers tilled the land. Business people built towns and roads upon it. Pesticides and fertilizers flowed into the river waters and poisoned the one-celled animals and plants. The snails died, the fish died, the mammals and the birds died. But this is a sad story, said a fifth child. Please tell us a happy story. The storyteller picked up his pole and quietly skimmed the dugout canoe across the water and down a trail in the sawgrass. Then he sat down and told the children a new story. 5 children and a storyteller poled into the Everglades. Eventually the children grew up and ran the earth. The clouds of birds returned to an abundance of fish in the water. The flowers tumbled into bloom. Quantities of alligators bellowed through the sawgrass again, and a multitude of panthers, deer, raccoons, and otters cavorted on the islands. Oh, that's a much better story, said the children. Now pull us home quickly so we can grow up. The end. So the news story wasn't made yet, but it's one that is in the making. So it's hopeful that you guys, by being home all this time and being stuck in the house, are seeing the beauty of nature around you and how we can fix this. Did you know that in some parts of the country, like Italy, that the water in the canals is now clear again because they don't have boats running there with motors right now because everyone's quarantined? In other parts of the world, the air is much cleaner than it has been in years and years because cars aren't running. So what can we do to make a difference when we get out of quarantine? All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the story. Talk to you later.